The UFC is no joke. There are constant knockouts that could easily lead to a fatal injury. Thankfully, the sport is designed so these fighters don't get life-threatening injuries, and we get some entertaining knockouts. Today, we're going to discuss the best knockouts in UFC history. First up, we have Rousey versus Holm. Back in 2015, Ronda Rousey was easily the most important and probably one of the best female UFC fighters. She was a huge name even back then, and was defending her title for the 7th time against Holm. Holm was definitely the underdog in this fight, but she was sure she was going to beat Rousey in this climactic fight. The odds were against her. Even the crowd was against her. You have to remember, Ronda Rousey was the big thing back then. She was the winner even before the match started. The fight was insane. But in just under a minute, Holm took down Rousey with a beautiful combo of blocking Rousey's shots and following it up with an amazing kick from the left. She took down Rousey and she fell toward the canvas clean. Holm took down a legend that day and cemented that moment in the history books. Obviously, since then, Ronda Rousey has become a huge star outside of the UFC through acting and other projects. But this moment showed that she was defeatable and that someone like Holm could take her down. Holm was regarded as one hell of a fighter after that day, and not someone to mess with. And now we have Nunes versus Andrade. This fight was just legendary and really shows what a wrecking machine Andrade truly is. So, what happened in this fight? Nunes was meant to take down Andrade in this fight. She had only one weakness going into the fight, which was being picked up and dropped on the head. Everyone said outside of that Nunes had the clear and pure advantage over Andrade. Of course, Andrade wasn't something to be messed with at the time either, as she was known as the Wrecking Ball, and a pure machine when it came to being a UFC fighter. This match was highly anticipated, and everyone wanted to watch this legendary showdown commence. The fight went on as normal, but Andrade just destroyed Nunes by exploiting her one weakness. Whilst defending herself against Nunes, Andrade took the advantage and the opportunity to pick Nunes up. She picked her up and slammed her down onto her head, then follows up with some extra hits on the ground to secure her victory over Nunes. The fight was just insane and showed just how amazing Andrade was at fighting in the UFC. She was already someone not to mess around with, but this really secured her position in the world of the UFC. Next up is Shevchenko versus I. This fight was going to be hard for I before it even started. At the time, Shevchenko was one of the best martial artists in the world. Everyone knew her for her insane skill in the UFC and her overall perfect martial arts skills. She was just an assassin, as Joe Rogan would put it. Everyone knew what skill she had, and everyone knew that I had to pull everything out to take her down. When it came time for the match, Shevchenko was taking over from the start. Walking into the ring and talking to her coaches was just perfect. She dominated the match before it even started. Obviously, as we know now, I just had no chance, and Shevchenko took her out so quickly that even I didn't see it coming. During the fight, they were just weighing one another up, and Shevchenko goes for an amazing kick out of nowhere. The kick collides clean with I's face, and she just hits the canvas right there and then. Her legs just gave up on her, and she falls to the floor. Shevchenko didn't even need to do anything for a follow-up. She knew she had taken I down in an instant. Next is Cyborg versus Nunes. This next one is for the history books, and as Joe Rogan states in the commentary for this fight, it just shows how legendary Amanda Nunes is. What happened then? Well, even before this fight began, everyone was tense because this fight was between two of the best female UFC fighters at the time. Cyborg was the reigning champion, and Amanda Nunes was there to take her down to become the best of the best. Before this fight began, Amanda Nunes was already seemingly the best fighter at the time, and all she had to do to secure her spot was take down the unstoppable Cyborg. This fight was just amazing, and Amanda Nunes secured the bag by cleanly knocking out Cyborg as she was defending herself against the walls of the canvas. Nunes runs out of the ring and begins cheering with everyone. It was just a legendary moment, and even Joe Rogan was freaking out at the time. He knew that Amanda Nunes was about to prove to everyone that she was the best female UFC fighter at the time. He respects her for it, and she took home the winning stature after that match. Cyborg lost her title, and Amanda Nunes gained even more notoriety. The clean right hook towards Cyborg just showed how amazing Nunes' knockout power truly was. She was already known for having some insane power on her fists, but she just had to prove her knockout power was as good and even better than before. Amanda Nunes proved a lot in that fight, and it cemented her as one of if not the best, female UFC fighter of all time. Next, we have Gabriel Gonzaga KO's Mirko. One of the best knockouts in UFC history came from some of the flashiest plays in the game. Many knockouts come from a random punch that lands correctly, but others go for things like kicks. This knockout came from an amazing kick from Gabriel Gonzaga. He kicked Mirko with such a force that he had never felt before. Because of his performance in UFC 270, we got to see him get a championship fight. The kick also started the downfall of the fighter, and would be the beginning of many more losses to come. And now we have Anderson Silva versus Chris Leben. Anderson Silva versus Chris Leben was one of the best fights in the UFC at the time, and showcased an insane classic knockout. Anderson Silva was a former Pride fighter who entered the UFC in 2006. He made his debut against the Ultimate Fighter Season 1 alum Chris Leben. At this point, Leben was on a 6-fight win streak in the UFC middleweight division and was on the path to a title shot. Instead, Silva made a statement in his UFC debut fight. He dispatched the headstrong, tough Leben in just 49 seconds. It's one of the greatest UFC knockouts in history. This fight began the Anderson Silva era. After knocking out Leben, Silva went on to take the UFC middleweight title and had a 15-fight win streak. What do you think about this insane knockout? Let us know in the comments down below. And finally, we have Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. Our final knockout is easily one of the best and biggest in history, and it really changed the landscape of the UFC and MMA forever. Jose Aldo just couldn't be stopped in his prime. During 18 consecutive fights, none of the great and amazing fighters he came up against could stop him. He took down Mike Thomas Brown, Kenny Florian, Uriah Faber, Frankie Edgar, Chan Sung Jun, and Chad Mendes. It took Conor McGregor to finally take down the legend, and in that fight, it took McGregor only 13 seconds. This was easily the highlight of the year when it happened, and it became one of the biggest highlight reel finishes of all time. Just remember, at the time, Aldo was literally unbeatable. He was a beast. The fact that Conor McGregor took him out in 13 seconds was just insane, and really showed just how strong and powerful McGregor really is. Though McGregor isn't the best in the UFC anymore, this fight really solidified the fighter as one of the greatest of all time. This became one of the most memorable knockouts in the UFC, and is still spoken about to this day, almost 7 years later. And that's the end of today's video. The UFC has had some insane knockouts from either side of the sport. Both men and women have had some insane knockouts, and showcase just how powerful they truly are. The UFC creates some insane opportunities for people to show their strength, but also shows just how dangerous a fighting sport can really be. More knockouts are caused in the UFC because there's limited safety involved. Fighters can easily be injured and will more than likely get taken down at some point. What do you think some of the best UFC knockouts of all time are? Let us know down in the comments section below. Hopefully you enjoyed this latest video. If you did, would you please let us know down in the comments section? It would be very helpful. Make sure to like the video, comment down below, and of course, subscribe to the channel with the notification bell turned on. Thank you for watching today's video. We'll see you next time.